Guys, Kelly here, and I just wanted to share with you some of my recent reads. So these are 3 books that I have read in the last few weeks. And I'm going to go in order from the one I liked the least to the one I liked the best. I didn't really dislike any of these, so my lowest rating is actually a 3.5. And that is for Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And this is a kind of post-apocalyptic story. And the thing is that whenever I heard somebody describe the plot of this one, they always talked about it being about this traveling theatrical group that is, living in this post-apocalyptic time and going from town to town and sharing their talents. But that's not really what it's about. It does have a group in there. They're actually called the Symphony, so they're both musicians and actors. But they're not the main focus. There's several different perspectives we're following. We're following a girl that is in the symphony, and then we're also following, there's a lot of people. I'm not going to describe all of them. We're following a man that died even before the main epidemic started, and kind of like his family. We're following at least 4 perspectives, I would say. I don't know. It kind of like switches back and forth on who we're following. So that's why I think people focus on the symphony, because it's kind of convoluted how the plot works. And that's why I had a hard time with this book. Like, most people universally love it. There's a lot of 4 and 5-star reviews for it. But for me, it just had too much back and forth and too many perspectives. So I just felt like every time I was starting to really connect, like if I was in with the symphony girl whose name is Kirsten, when I was following Kirsten, I was getting invested in her and her nomadic life with the symphony. And then suddenly, 2 chapters later, we'd be following something that happened 20 years before the epidemic even happened. And I'm like, I really don't care what happened back then. I want to know what's happening now, 20 years after this big epidemic has, killed most of the people on the earth. Like, that's what I want to follow. How are people living and surviving in this day and age? And it just kept going back and forth, and switching between people and what was happening, that I just couldn't connect to anyone. Like, everybody says it's a character-driven novel, but I found that I could not describe the personality or the appearance of any of the characters in this book, because we didn't get to stay with them for very much time. So how is that character driven when I can't even connect with the characters? But there's not really a plot. Like, there is plot things that happen, and they supposedly connect, and they do kind of, but it's very anticlimactic to me. Like, it wasn't like, it didn't feel like a plot kind of story, because it's more like just kind of telling what's happening before and after this apocalyptic epidemic. But so as you see, I didn't love the book. I thought some of her writing was amazing, and I think that if this had been a novella that followed just one character in this like time after the epidemic, I would have loved it, because there were several chapters that were from one character named Clark, and if all of Clark's chapters were like condensed down into a novella, I would give it 5 stars, because I loved following his story and like where he's living after the epidemic and the community that is forming. I loved that part, but I did not enjoy some of the other perspectives, and just couldn't connect to a lot of the characters because of all the back and forth. And so that's why I'm giving it a 3.5. I would read something else by her, because like I said, some of her writing was genius and some of the things were really vividly done. I just didn't think this worked together as a whole story for me. And then the next one I read was I can never remember these titles. It's Their Fractured Light by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner, and that's the 3rd story in the Starbound trilogy. So I had previously reviewed These Broken Stars and This Shattered World, and that's why I can never remember these titles, because they all are like 3 words and they're very similar. So I finally finished that series. I did listen to it on audiobook again, which I recommend. This is the way that you should read the trilogy, because the audiobooks are really well done. This one, once again, was really good. It has 2 narrators, one from the girl's perspective, one from the guy, and then there's like an ensemble that does these in-between chapters, which I can't really tell you what those are because it kind of gives away stuff from the other books, but they are kind of creepy and really well done with an ensemble cast in those sections. And I loved how it was done in this book. And so since this is the third in a trilogy, I don't want to give much away. They kind of, each book follows 2 different characters. And so this book had, you know, 2 new characters that we're introduced to. And they were my favorite 2 characters from all of the books. So I really loved them. And we kind of follow just them for the first half of the book. And then like the stories from the other books start to connect. And so then it kind of ends up the trilogy towards the second half. But we're still in the perspectives of these 2 characters. And I just loved them together. I loved their relationship and kind of their personalities. I did like how the trilogy ended and thought it wrapped up really nice. I gave it 4 stars, and I didn't rate it as high as I did the first book. And the reason why is that even though I liked the ending and how things came together, I felt like there were a ton of conveniences that happened anytime we were in an action scene that that it made me actually physically roll my eyes while I was reading it, like seriously, and just felt like lazy writing. Like I feel like from reading other things by these authors that they could have taken more risks with this story. I feel like they did it in the first 2 books. They took a little more risks, and this one I felt like they just kind of went with the convenient plot line. So that's why I gave it 4 stars, because even though I liked the characters and that we got a conclusion, I felt like they could have taken and gone a little farther with the action. And the last book I read was a 5-star book for me, and that was Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. And this is the first book in what originally was a trilogy. So it was originally Poison Study, Magic Study, Fire Study. And then later she wrote more books and added on to the study series. And I had originally read this trilogy several years ago, and I wanted to reread them so that I could continue on now that I found out there were more books. And I just didn't really remember anything from it the first time, so I'm glad I reread it because it definitely did not come back to me as I was reading the story. But I loved this story. And it's a fantasy series, and just like the basic, so I don't give anything away, it's about a woman named Yelena, and she, at the beginning of the novel, is in prison because she has murdered someone. And in this realm that they live in, if you commit a murder, no matter what the reason, you are killed, and that is your sentence. And she is about to be, put to death when she's taken out of her dungeon, and she doesn't know what's happening, and it turns out she's given a choice between being executed or being the food taster for the person in command. So she has the choice between dying right away or doing a job for the commander where she could die at any moment if he's poisoned, because she would be the one testing the poison in his food. And so, of course, she chooses to live and be the food taster, and the story goes on from there. And I really love this because Yelena is an amazing main character. I usually do not compare books, but I will say a lot of people would compare this book plot-wise to Throne of Glass, because, it's a woman who is a tough main character who is either given the choice of dying or working for a ruler that she might not agree with or really want to be in this position, but she has to, and she finds out she has a little magic in her and all that stuff. So there are a lot of similarities in that way. But I think what sets this book apart and makes it superior is that Yelena really is an amazing female character. I had a really hard time with Throne of Glass series. Everyone says that Selena is this strong, badass female character because of being an assassin or whatever, but I had a really hard time with Throne of Glass. I stopped after 2 books because I did not find her a good, strong female, because she just kept running into situations without thinking about them, thinking that is strength and courage. And she also would not listen to anybody and get any of their advice. People that were her allies, she would just this is what I think and I feel, and I'm just going to do it. And I don't call that as being a strong characteristic. I think that's just stupid behavior. And Yelena, on the other hand, she develops a group of friends during this book, and if they give her some advice, she takes that into consideration when she's thinking through a situation. She also, when she sees a problem and sees that she needs to do something, she doesn't just jump into it. She takes the time to read and investigate things. She also takes the time to learn more physical skills to build herself up and make it so that she can defend herself better. And she has a history of abuse, just like Selena does in Throne of Glass. But I like the way they do it in this book, and how she does have like PTSD and has issues where the abuse comes back to give her like weak moments and affect the way she reacts in the situation. But she always recognizes that and like realizes she can be stronger than that and can step past the abuse that she has been given, and that she's better than that, that she can lead a better life and build herself up. And I really enjoy that about her, that we still have that abuse in the background. It's part of who she is and will always be, but she's going to rise up and do whatever she can to better herself. And so I think she's just an amazing character. This book also is really great because it has good friendships in it. It has a romance that is not super heavy through the book. It like really kind of slow burns throughout, so I feel like that's a natural build in the relationship. And also, I love that there's like a random trans character that just kind of gets slipped into the narrative and isn't like, it is not pointing out like, woo woo, we've got like some representation here. It's just like, we're just gonna put this in, and it's great. It just smooths through into the narrative, and I think that's awesome. And I liked that character as well. So I really enjoyed this book, and I think that the series is going to be amazing, and so I want to continue on and read the rest of them. I can't remember how many there are since I have the original trilogy, but I don't know how many she added on. So those are the 3 books that I have read recently. I am very close to finishing several more books, so you'll probably see another recent reads from me coming up soon. Talk to you later. Bye!